Good afternoon, good evening. To everyone who's joined us today, thank you so much. And welcome to our fourth module for our Managing Family Life Online as You Stay at Home series. We are representatives from Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program hosting this with you today. My name is Lynette Owens. I'm the founder and global director of the program for Trend Micro. And I'm really excited for today's topic because we are joined by Dr. Samir Hinduja and Dr. Justin Patchen from the Cyberbullying Research Center. I'd like to welcome you both today and really looking forward to this conversation about how are we to handle bullying when we're always at home and always online. So as a reminder for those who have not been to one of our sessions before, again, this is a series that will continue through for another several weeks. And we've been covering quite a number of topics under the categories of what it means to be online, to be safe while you're there, to be kind while you're there, and to be savvy. And obviously today's conversation will be very much focused on the area of kindness and unkindness and what that means to our kids, to each other. And so I think to start us off, I would just wanted to do a quick poll to see how people have been experiencing, interrelationships and everything online. And if you could just go ahead and answer the poll in front of you, have you witnessed or experienced more unkindness online since COVID-19 happened? Yes, no, or about the same. And I think for Justin and Samir, while people are answering that, can you tell us a little bit about the Cyberbullying Research Center? Tell us what is it that you do there and what your mission is.
Go ahead, Samir.
All right, so thanks everyone for joining. The Cyberbullying Research Center has been around for over 15 years, and we focus a lot on trying to identify, prevent, and respond to various forms of technology use and abuse amongst young people. And so that covers cyberbullying, sexting, digital dating abuse, sextortion, digital self-harm, some of these issues that have cropped up at the intersection of kids and tech. But what we take a lot of pride in is making sure that we approach these topics and these issues from a positive perspective. We're a big fan of youth, adolescents. We remember very clearly what it was like to be a young person, be a youth, and just the various sorts of struggles that they face. And so we're always remembering to know the importance of coming alongside them, supporting them, encouraging them, mentoring them, and then meaningfully assisting them as they embrace technology and social media to accomplish their personal and professional goals. So we go around, and apart from writing research papers, we work with schools and nonprofits and kids themselves about these issues, all hoping to make a difference in terms of their attitudes and actions online.
Great. And are you, I just want to quickly share the results here of how people were feeling about or what they're experiencing these days after COVID-19 or since COVID-19. So it sounds like it's been about the same, not really that much worse. A few of you did say it was a little bit worse. So I think, let's get into what this means to our kids. I was opening my mail the other day very carefully after I let it sit out for a little bit. And I got this letter from my auto insurance company, and it said that because nobody's driving anymore, there are no accidents anymore, and therefore fewer claims being made for insurance payments. So they were going to reward us all with a discount for the next couple of months. So hopefully your auto insurance companies are doing that, by the way. And so it made me think about, well, fewer people on the roads means fewer bad things happening to people on the roads. What I worry about in this topic is that our assumption is we're spending more time online than we were before, and therefore are the chances of kids or even adults experiencing unkindness and bullying greater. I remember, you do your research, the research you just most recently did a year ago, saying that there was some correlation between more time online spent with more, potential experience of bullying or unkindness. Can you comment on that and what your thoughts are with regard to the fact that kids are online more now? Is it worse? Is it going to be worse after you're able to look at it?
Sure, I guess I can start. Definitely, I mean, look, if kids aren't online, if they're not using technology, there's not going to be cyberbullying. Just like if kids don't go to school, there's not going to be school bullying. I imagine the school bullying numbers are really great right now because we haven't been in school for 2 months. But that's kind of a simplistic view of this relationship. We also know that some schools are better than others at preventing and responding to bullying and cyberbullying. Some online environments are better than others at addressing misuses of the behavior as well. Some families are better equipped to kind of deal with these issues or work with their kids. And so I think what's more important is the adults in the children's lives guiding them how to use these technologies safely and responsibly. And I think it's definitely a concern if you let your kid use technology for hours and hours and hours every day without any guidance or supervision or tools to help them should they run into trouble. There probably will be more problems. Samir and I have seen as many, if not more, reports of cyberbullying. We get, emails every day, and people contact us through our website. So it's definitely not going away. So we have to be prepared for that as parents and others who work with kids.
Is it different what you're hearing about? Are the reports different from what you were seeing prior to COVID-19? Or are they kind of the same situations, just more of them?
I think it's about the same. Think about the emails that have come in from educators across the nation, and it's the same sort of, situations that they have sent to us or others have sent to us in previous years and previous months. One thing that comes to mind is that if you're an administrator, if you're an educator on campus during the school day, you're pulled in a ton of directions. And so one of the things I wonder, and this will take more research to find out, is that because an administrator now is just in front of their computer at all times, they're more quick to perhaps drop us an email or give us a call simply because they're just in front of their device 24/7, so to speak. So maybe reporting has increased a little bit because of that, but also maybe it's because youth are online much more now.
Okay.
Lynette, one quick comment of a difference. A little bit of a difference I noticed early on was a friend of mine whose son is a 5th grader. The school gave all the 5th graders Chromebooks, and they all had email addresses. And within the first week or two of homeschooling, there were inappropriate messages being sent around. So I think some schools have kind of been thrust into this distance learning without yet providing the tools to the students and the parents about how to deal with those kinds of issues, because this particular 5th grader was sending a hurtful message using his school email address and the school device, and that just shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. There may be a lag factor between I just got to hurry up and be virtual and not really thinking through how do I do this properly. But there seems to be a willingness to be understanding too of the schools, because they're going through quite a lot being asked to do what they're doing. On that note about patience too, it's interesting the way people answered the poll, and not necessarily as representative a sample necessarily of the country, but I am also seeing people being more patient. There is both stress and anxiety going on, but there's also this other side where we seem to be also a little bit more patient with each other. Many people seem to be a lot more patient with cooking and baking breads. I don't have time to do, but so do you think that with regard to schools and their abilities to sort of address these things, do you think it's going to take long for them to catch up to and be more proactive about, hey, that's not an appropriate use of Gmail? And how are schools choosing to discipline? I mean, what would your advice be to discipline a student who's misusing school property now that they never would have had at that age, if they're actually hurting someone? How
Yeah,
would you?
I'll take a stab at that. I feel that all of the policies that they have on the books in the school district, they still absolutely should apply. I know it's a little bit more challenging to perhaps implement certain sanctions, but they should have rules on the board related, or on the books related to mistreatment of others, using technology, about inappropriate posts, about digital reputation issues, things like that, all still completely relevant in this day and age. And some administrators, they might wonder, can I do something if it's off campus using a personal device? But the courts have actually been pretty clear over the years to make a stand. And they say that if you can identify some sort of nexus with the school and it substantially disrupts learning at school, or in this case, off school properties, but distance learning, if it substantially disrupts, let's say, distance learning, or infringes upon the rights of other students to feel safe and supported and secure, then you can have formal or informal discipline. The latter part of your question is the most tricky. What does this look like in this day and age? And so, I mean, I don't really know the answer. Justin, have you heard of any cases?
Thanks for giving me the difficult part. Yeah, that's great.
I just feel like, from what I've heard, the administrators are warning, which is useful, but we want the sanctions to have some sort of teeth. But it feels like they're just kicking the can a little bit further down the road rather than implementing some sort of sanction, because they don't really know what it would look like. The kids need the device. They can't take away the technology. They can for sure talk to the parents and ask the parents to implement some sort of home sanction, and that is happening. But in terms of what the school can do outside of that, it's just very complicated. And you don't want to open yourself up for lawsuits.
Yeah.
No, and it's right. And in the vast majority of cases, like in the example I gave, I think, a counselor at the school or a principal or even the teacher, if it's an elementary school, would contact the parents and talk about the situation. And I imagine, given our experience, that'll take care of it. The child just needs a little more education and realize that you can't be doing this, especially at that age. But it does become a lot more tricky if it's middle school, high school, if it's a student-owned or a school-owned device, a school email address, a school-moderated, learning platform. I think those situations, it's very cut and dried that the school has a responsibility to maintain kind of decorum and not tolerate abuse or kind of harassment, mistreatment. But now, in those kinds of situations are pretty easy to deal with compared to what we usually see, which is these kinds of arguments, disagreements, threats, cyberbullying that move on to Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok. And that's where the school, really does kind of struggle in terms of what they can do. And certainly contacting parents, contacting the students is appropriate. Hopefully that'll handle it. And parents just need to be creative in responding, and as they always do, and stress the fact that these kind of behaviors are just inappropriate. But if it escalates and if it's continuing to disrupt what's happening in the school environment, that's when the school certainly has to take some action and be thoughtful and creative about doing it.
Yeah, and I would, by the way, I'd like to encourage anyone who's listening, if you want to go ahead and use the Q&A feature to post questions at any time. We will start to review your questions towards the end of our session today, but you can post them at any time if they come to you. And I think, Justin, that's a good segue to probably what more kids may be experiencing now, and that is the non-school environment bullying among peers. They could be classmates, but on platforms not owned or licensed by the school. And I feel very fortunate that I haven't had to deal with this yet as a parent. But I know there are people out there who have. So the other part of this is that we do believe there's a lot more kids using social places online that may not have been allowed to prior to COVID-19, but now parents have said, you know what, it's the only way for you to stay connected. So I'm going to say yes. And saying yes, though, means maybe they weren't ready and they didn't prepare their kids for the possibilities of bullying, either doing it or experiencing it. So what would you say to that parent whose kid has entered social media for the first time during this pandemic and might actually be starting to experience, bullying or unkindness towards them? What would you advise?
I would say, most importantly, make sure there's an open line of communication so that if your child does run into some kind of problem, they feel comfortable talking with you about it. In our experience, a lot of times kids are reluctant to discuss these issues with parents, especially if it's the child's first foray into using technology and using social media. They might be afraid to come forward because they'll think you're just going to take that technology right away. And so make it very clear to them, like, look, there are expectations for behavior here, but if you run into problems, I, as a parent, am here to help. I mean, definitely, I think it's true that more and more kids are using more and more technology, even at a younger age. I have a fourth grader at home, and he's definitely using Messenger Kids, and a lot of he's using Google a lot lately because he's searching for insects, and who knows what, he's out in the yard right now doing something. But he's always got his device with him when it never was the case before. And so I have daily conversations with him about, these conversations that he's having with his cousins or friends on Messenger Kids, or if he is Googling, this morning he was Googling a lightning bug larva or something. And I said, well, what happens if you Google something and some inappropriate thing comes up, and I'll talk with you about it. And so having these regular conversations, also empowering our kids to be able to take some actions on their own. So maybe before you get them connected to Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it is, spend a few minutes with them walking through some of the features, or maybe even learning together some of the features to report inappropriate content, to block users, looking at kind of the terms of service so that you can together learn these tools in a way that'll be more helpful moving forward.
That's great. And hopefully this hasn't happened to anyone on the listening yet, and never happens to anybody. But if I love one of your resources that talks about resilience, and I think when we talk about resilience as a skill, first it's very empowering because you realize you can learn it because it's a skill. But the second is that it puts some control in your own hands versus trying to control everybody else. You just cannot make everybody be nice. It's just not within your control. So what can we control? And I think that's why I love that idea of resilience and teaching kids to develop the skill. So can you walk us through how would you help practice that with a kid? How could you just kind of walk them through examples? If you have an example, or how would you explain how to do that for the parents listening?
Yeah, I want to reiterate what you said about the fact that resilience is such an important skill, and many times when you're thinking about bullying and cyberbullying, it's actually neglected because a school or a parent, a family might think of their child as a target or a victim, and then we need to swoop in and rescue that child, that victim. And unfortunately, if we keep doing that, well, then they never develop any sort of skill set or toolbox to deal with conflict and to deal with haters, people who want to pull them down, who tear them down. And parents want their kids to succeed and to achieve, higher and higher levels of accomplishment. And as you do that, more and more people are going to want to tear you down because they're jealous or insecure or dealing with their own issues. So bottom line, we need our kids to be resilient because as they succeed, they will face more and more abuse, honestly, in different sorts of ways, whether it's verbal or rumors or social sabotage or whatever. So the first thing that comes to mind is that our kids right now are consuming a ton of media. And so you can use books and movies where the main character is all about resilience. And I will, in the chat, probably send you all a link of my favorite books and movies specific to resilience. And the point is, when you give these to a kid or you watch the movie with the kid, you need to take the time to talk about, the aspect of resilience. What was the obstacle that needed to be overcome? what did it take for this child or this teenager or this young person to believe in himself or herself to overcome that issue, and then look how it resulted in the end. I would also take the time to share your own stories of resilience, because you, Lynette, as a parent, you've overcome various forms of adversity. Justin has, I have as well. And I know sometimes we think that our kids might roll their eyes, but maybe we can catch them in a moment where they're receptive and we share that story, and then down the road, they think to themselves, my goodness, my mom did this or my dad did this, and so I can face this and I can overcome it as well. There's also various sorts of theoretical models. One's called the ABC model, the Adversity, Beliefs, and Consequences model. And I'll share a link in the chat as well for all of you to look at, which explains that. But big picture, whenever we face any sort of adversity, like we have a flat tire, or our boss is yelling at us, or we're dealing with an aggressor online, right, almost automatically, we start to explain that behavior to ourselves in a certain way. For example, if someone's being mean to me online and I'm a child or a teenager or even an adult, I could quickly think to myself, man, maybe this is how other people think about me as well. Maybe what I did say was really stupid and boneheaded. Man, I say that sort of stuff all the time. And then you start remembering your faults and your mistakes, and you just descend down this spiral of self-hate and self-torment. That's not very healthy. And the point is that sometimes our automatic responses, especially those of adolescents who are so concerned about peer perceptions, those automatic responses that kick in without us thinking, they really undermine resilience. They sort of are an axe to the trunk of any sort of resilience we want to try to grow. So what we need our kids to do, and what we can do as parents with our kids, is to help them think about the adversity and the beliefs that they've adopted as a result of the adversity, and make sure that those beliefs are healthy. So again, if someone is abusing me online, yes, I could think to myself, wow, this might be how everybody else thinks about me as well. But I could also say, wait, what are the other possible reasons why this person is being mean to me? Maybe they're dealing with heavy stuff in their own household. Maybe they're dealing with their own insecurities or fears or self-doubts or self-hatred. Maybe they're jealous about some aspect of my life. And what do I need to do? I need to respond with kindness. I think about the golden rule. I need to think about maybe just ignoring them and assuming that they're having a bad day, because I know I've had bad days and I've been super cranky and irritable as well. So to summarize, we just, instead of adopting problematic beliefs that undermine resilience, we want to reframe them into more positive, healthy beliefs. And that helps with resilience and helps us to overcome any obstacles or any crappy situation that comes our way.
Oh, I love that model. You know, it's the first, you know, maybe there's a question you can ask yourself. What do I believe about the reason for this incident? That's the first, that's the B, right? A is the adversity, B is your belief. And so helping kids change the belief to start with. I've actually used it with my son, and I found it to be very, very helpful, actually. It gets them to point C, which is his choice. Brush it off, walk away, don't let it consume you. It's not a good use of your energy.
Instead of raging or
yes,
spiraling into depression or something like that.
Absolutely. I do want to ask people if they have questions. Now, we actually have had a few come up here, and so let's go through a couple of these if you don't mind, Justin and Samir. Let's see here. I'd like to read this one if you don't. This is a little lengthy, but I'm going to read it. My 9-year-old daughter has 2,500 followers on TikTok. She sees negative comments every day because she's interacting with such a large group of people. I guess it's the law of averages, right? We told her that if she wants those 200 likes on a video, she will have to deal with a few negative comments as a result. I think she understands that negativity is simply part of social media, and it's made her aware of her own actions towards others. I think this is more of a comment rather than a question, but you know, do you want to respond to that? You know, is that part of resilience, just saying, hey, out of that many people, focus on the fact that the majority really like what you're doing and there's a few that don't?
Yeah. Justin, I'll let you jump in, but I simply want to say real quick here that, Lynette, I agree with what you just said, but also I want to share with the audience that here we have a 9-year-old who is not clueless. You know, she understands that some people are going to be mean, and that's just part and parcel of interacting with anyone on social media. So let's not believe that she's not implementing any safety measures, but let's say, hey, I'm glad that you're able to deal with this. I'm glad that you're able to see that this is just part of how it goes. But if it got really worse, or if you were personally threatened, then what you would do. And then that just helps with more conversation in case things get out of control somehow. Justin?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree completely. I was just going to ask the 9-year-old if she could help me use TikTok, because I can't even get Samir to follow me on TikTok. So, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like this parent has a good relationship with the child. 9 years old it's pretty young. I mean, I wouldn't trust my 10-year-old on TikTok. But every child is a little different, and girls tend to be a little more mature than boys, especially at that age. So just keeping close contact, and if she's at the point where she's got 2,500 followers, she's definitely seen some stuff. So
absolutely, cheers with that. I mean, that's amazing and great parenting. Another question here is if your teen has been bullied and has even brought the issue to you as his or her parents, but they really don't want to involve the teachers or the parents of the people doing the bullying, how do you manage this? This is someone who's trying to do the right thing by coming to you. Obviously, the lines of communication are open, but they're really worried about dragging anyone else into it and making it worse for themselves. What's your advice?
That's pretty much the typical situation. I mean, I can't imagine there's a teenager that would go to their parent and say, let's go to the school and work this out. That just doesn't happen. So that's where the parent does need to start getting creative. And again, trying to give the child some tools for reporting, for blocking, for collecting the evidence. So taking screenshots, giving that child some agency and some decision making. Also, we recommend that if you're being bullied, whether you're a teenager, a child, or an adult, to not only keep the evidence, but also keep a journal, kind of almost like a diary of what happened and how it affected you, because that can be therapeutic in its own right, but it also can help document if it does get to the point where it's significantly disrupting the child at school, it's affecting their grades, their schoolwork, then you have to. And so you have to explain to your child that, look, this has become too much of a problem to not address it. And if you've got all of that evidence, screenshots, chat logs, a journal, it'll be a lot easier for the school, or in the worst case scenario, the police, to better understand what's happened in a way that can hopefully be helpful moving forward. But that's definitely a tricky situation.
Well, and it's interesting is that there typically would have been a potentially a face-to-face meeting going, if it were reported and then investigated, there would be this other step happening in person at the school, and that sort of disappeared now. And so how are people sort of arbitrating these situations now in COVID-19 times? I guess on Zoom.
Yeah. I've heard some counselors and principals dealing with it that way, but you're right. I mean, it's not the face-to-face type situation, so I feel like it's even harder to deal with in that way. A lot of phone calls and trying to work through it in that way, but it's become more difficult to address these issues without a doubt.
But I'd also, real quick,
sorry, go ahead.
My sister is a middle school guidance counselor, and she is having hour-long phone calls with girls who are let's say dealing with harassment online. And I would think that, I'm not sure, but maybe these conversations are much more rich and meaningful because they're happening outside of the school and on a phone, instead of in the office, where my sister then has to get to the next task, or there's more students coming in, or it's about to be lunch. Just seems like maybe there's more open-ended time to really get into the meat of issues on the phone with students, and it really be an encouragement because there's that personal connection of a phone call. So there's a positive there too.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely been things, good things that have happened because of this. And I think that's one of them. I think the quality of time, even though we only see each other in a box, the quality seems to be much better in some ways. Well, I think, and we've had several other questions here, which I think what I'd like to do is actually send them your way, Justin and Samir, and then get the answers to people. To the group afterwards. We're coming up to the end of our time. I really want to thank you so much for being with us today. I realize it is short, but we have tried to keep these sessions 30 minutes out of respect for other people's time too. And thank you everybody for being on here today. I want to encourage you to join us next week as we talk about screen time, and we'll be joined by Dr. Michael Rich from the Center on Media and Child Health. And for those of you who are still on here, I would like to actually also encourage you to fill out the survey that you'll see when you exit the Zoom session today, because if you choose to leave your email address, you might win a free copy of Try Micro Maximum Security to secure up to 5 devices in your home, and it's good for 1 year subscription. So again, thanks everybody for joining. This session will be recorded and posted on internetsafety.trymicro.com/webinars. You'll see other resources on today's topic, as well as all the other topics we've talked about, including several from the Cyberbullying Research Center that Samir has actually provided in the chat today, and we'll post that on our resource page as well. So again, thanks everybody. Thank you, Justin and Samir. Keep doing the great work you're doing, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.